Now, beloved within the Seventh Adventist Church, I hesitated to come out with this message. Because this message is a very solemn message. And, it's very controversial. I don't like speaking on controversial issues. I don't like preaching on controversial issues. Even a relative of mine, one of my uncles said, Lucis, just be quiet. Don't talk about it. People forget about it. About the movement I was talking about regarding David Gates' ministry. His sermon called Even at the Door. Well, beloved, I have to come out with this message. I have to preach this warning because this is a warning against deception. Futuristic, last-day deceptions, beloved, within the Seventh Adventist Church. Now, as you well know, Pastor David Gates came out with a message. And in his message, he was stating that probation was soon to close for the church and that Christ's return was imminent and that something could happen in the spring of 2019 where loss of life legislation will be signed and all these things. And many people, when they heard this message from the General Conference leadership on down, claimed that message, including Pastor Mark Finley, that message was a time-setting message, beloved. Well, I found a statement here in the Spirit of Prophecy from this book right here called Keepers of the Flame by Colin D. Stannis and Russell D. Stannis. And they have a chapter in this book here called Futurism. And they go into the Spirit of Prophecy statements and Bible statements that define what futurism is. Now, we know as Adventists that we don't believe in gap theory. We don't teach gap theory in our church, beloved. We're not gap theorists. We're historicists. We believe in historicist interpretation of prophecy. That's what we teach, historicist interpretation of prophecy, beloved. And that is what really has just stuck out to me in a great deal. In a great deal. And historical perspective, as you all know, is that prophecy must be interpreted line upon line, here a little, there a little, and that only statements in the prophecy that it has symbolic meaning should be interpreted with Bible symbols like a beast, a king or a kingdom, water, peoples, nations, tongues, and kindreds, for instance, and wind, war, commotion, and strife, for instance. Like in the book Jeremiah talks about wind, war, commotion, and strife. But this statement right here, Manuscript Beliefs, page 32A, by Sister Wright, 1896. Look what Sister Wright says in this book by Colin Stannis called Keepers for the Flame, Keepers of the Faith. It states, there must be no long discussions presenting new theories in regard to the prophecies which God has already made plain. Now the great work from which the mind should not be diverted is the consideration of our personal safety in the sight of God. Now, beloved, I got a feeling that these Seventh Adventist ministers like Arthur Brandon or whatever his name is, Brandon, whatever his name is, or and this independent minister, David Gates. Now, of course, Brandon was nice to give me quite a sum of money to take care of a car insurance bill that I had a couple years ago. He's a very genuine, nice man. Got no qualms with him. But you know what? What breaks my heart is I feel like he knew this stuff all the time. He knew that we're not to argue about prophecy after 1844. He knew that time prophecy was over. He knew it. But he just wanted a following. He wanted to get his following so he can get his doctorate and he can be a Seventh Adventist member and have a credential still in the Adventist Church to start a Sabbath-keeping assembly, independent Sabbath-keeping assembly, from his clout that he got from his notoriety. And I feel like that's deceptive blow. That's a low blow, very low blow. And I wish I wasn't saying this. I'm the young guy. I should not be talking about the man. But you know what? those who are time setters will be lost, beloved. Simple as that, they're going to be lost. Time setters will be lost, and they're going to give up and have unbelief. They're going to give up. Time setters are going to give up and practice unbelief, beloved. It's simple as that. Time setters will give up and practice unbelief. And we need to be so mindful of that spirit in these last days, lest we're lost and we become time setters and start teaching those theories. Now, Pastor Mark Finley was telling the truth, beloved. Pastor Mark Finley was telling the truth. Time is no longer. When the angel put 1 foot upon the land and 1 foot upon the sea, time is no longer. That stands without impeachment. Time cannot be reapplied to literal days after 1844. That statement that they used from 6 manuscript release 251, the 1335-year prophecy has ended. And that statement and by the way, Doug Batchelor came up with that statement in his message called 1335, 1290, and 1260 reapply. He's the one who came up with that statement, but he's the one who warned Pastor David Gates about his error and not to come out with that statement because come out with his findings because it will destroy his ministry. He doesn't understand everything about the situation. And Doug Batchelor, he's a Seventh-day Adventist minister. He's in the ministry. And I think David Gates, he's simply a missionary pilot. He's not even a theologian like our pastor Stephen Boris and Mark Philly is. And as much as I respect and care about the ministry of David Gates, Uncle David Gates, and respect his service for God over the years and missionary pilot work, his kind behavior to people that he communicates with, I don't fault him for his mistake in time setting. Now, yes, it appeared to be that things were popping off because of the COVID-19 crisis recently. Yes, it appeared to be that way. I don't fault him because he probably has less information that I found from this book. And you see, but Satan is real slick, beloved. He's real slick. He will get a third of the angels, 2/3 of the angels to conspire against Pastor Ted Wilson and our General Conference leaders. And it'll come up with some plausible prophecy that makes it appear that everything's wrapping up right now. We need to leave the General Conference and not support with tithe and offering and turn around here and talk negative about leadership and form a coup against leadership and teach new theology. Well, he's not preaching theology, but teach that our leaders in ecumenicalism, stuff like that. Now, yes, there's some things in our church that are ecumenical, but, did Ellen White ever leave the church? Let me ask him this question. Did Ellen White ever leave the church? Last time I checked, beloved, Ellen White never left the church. She never left the church. Yes, he stated that they need to be organized. Yes, he stated that the church would appear about to fall, but she never left the church. So we don't need to leave the church either. We don't go around here starting independent movements and offshoots outside the denomination and now return tithe to the conference. Because you know what? Like Sister White says in Gospel Workers, he says those who do that, who fall into that trap, beloved, will lose their heavenly reward. So yes, time setting and offshootism is a salvific question, beloved. Don't be deceived. Don't be deceived. Also, the statement that they use in about Revelation 10, thou must prophesy again for many nations, tongues, kindreds, and peoples. That statement, a very famous statement they use out of Revelation 10, when they state clearly, mercy Lord, when they misquote Sister White, beloved, and state this, she is stating that prophecy can be reapplied to those days after 1844, because that she was only referring to prophetic time in relation to those prophecies, not probationary time in these last days. That total misunderstanding. When we read Sister White's writings, like Pastor O taught me when I took the prophecy here at Oakwood, we must consider time, place, and circumstance. Time, place, and circumstance. You know what? A lot of these same ministers that are time setting, they have funky lives. You know, they eat their dairy products. You know, they're disrespectful and mean and yell, and they support demon books like and immortality of the soul books like what's his book name again? Our Daily Bread, and they claim to be Seventh-day Adventist leaders and self-supporting ministries. And beloved, don't be deceived by them. And they extort widows and fathers, young men that are trying to make in life, that are in school and they have their degrees and they're retiring and so beloved, no. They have a confederacy against Pastor Ted Wilson, a conspiracy against our General Conference leaders. They have a conspiracy against the Bible and the Spirit of prophecy. They want to be the prophet. That's why they teach things like, oh, Lucis, we think there's going to be a prophet outside of the General Conference coming up pretty soon. Beloved, be careful with them. Be very, very careful with them because they are in apostasy. So no, as much as I was going to keep the feast days in the past, I'm not going to keep the feast days anymore because Christ is our Passover. As much as I was believing that the latter was going to put out a special calendar date in the church or whatever, calendar date. I thought the latter was going to put a calendar date on God's calendar, as they called it, or what we commonly call the Jewish calendar. I thought that that calendar date, God was our program, was out of rain on that calendar date, separate from some other calendar date. No, we must believe the Bible and the Spirit of prophecy as our final authority. Sister White says the latter rain comes after the sons of law crisis, so it can give us power to give the loud cry. He says Satan impersonates Christ before the second coming. She says that after the seven last plagues, probation fully closed for the church. And we know the seven last plagues definitely comes after the sons of law crisis and just for the second coming. So, beloved, just believe what the Bible and Sister White says. Don't believe what a man says. Isaiah 20, to long to the testimony. If they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. Hosea 12:13, it says, my prophet, the Lord brought Israel out of Egypt. By a prophet was he preserved. So, beloved, don't be deceived. Don't be deceived by the time setters. Dr. O is right. Jeremiah Davis is right. Marcus Mason is right. And David Gates, wrong. Arthur Branner, wrong. And Arthur Branner doesn't believe in the message anymore. He's a Sabbath-keeping, and he doesn't really keep the Sabbath like he should. He doesn't want to rest on the Sabbath. He's a phony Sabbath-keeping, time-setting heretic. So that's the long and short of it. I thought that he was teaching the truth. Now I understand. I had misinformation when I came in with that video saying a firm stance against the following of Arthur Blank. I didn't know everything. I had to study into that, into why he probably was put out of the conference. He probably was put out of the conference because he had issue with his conference president that he didn't want to be honest with and tell the truth that he probably didn't want to let everybody know why he was put out. It probably was for another reason than what was actually said. So, beloved, don't be deceived by these ministers and be slaughtered in his last days by Ezekiel 8:16, 9, 1 to 6. Don't be deceived by them. And people have told me that I appear to be wishy-washy, going back and forth, and not to believe me because I one day believe in the message, one day don't believe in the message. Now, beloved, be very practical. Don't make those claims, beloved, because look at Arthur Brand. He doesn't believe in the 2100-day prophecy now. He doesn't believe in the spirit prophecy now. He doesn't believe in victory over sin now. So who's really wishy-washy here? And he has a doctorate, an MDiv, a bachelor's in religion, and he has an independent church. So who's the one that's really wishy-washy? Grayson's closing, folks. Sister White says, many of our bright lights that if a mind for the brilliancy will go out in outer darkness, beloved. Pray, church, pray. Most Congressman, Father, thank you for this Sabbath day. Thank you for all wonderful mercy and blessings. If Pastor Arthur Banner was listening to this today, please save him in your kingdom. Please save him and his wife, Sister Espy Branner. And I'm asking that he'll consider his ways, cry, mourn over his apostasy from the truth, and reconcile with his brethren that he's hurt in the church, and not try to make a confederacy against God's people and mislead souls and take souls outside of God's ordained worldwide organized delegated system. I'm asking, Lord, that he'll save up the tithe, that he's not returning to the conference, and return it, Lord, so he will not lose his heavenly reward. I'm asking, Lord, that him and his wife will stop making claims against people like Dr. Isaac Olatunji and faithful leaders that are preaching the thus saith the Lord. In Jesus Christ's name I pray, amen. Maranatha, God bless you, family. Happy Sabbath. You all appreciate it.